I do hear that AI is our biggest existential threat. And they did a survey of 50 Nobel laureates, and AI just barely scraped into the top 10. It is something that we can't completely discount 100 or 200 years in the future, but there are much more pressing problems like climate change and the ongoing financial crisis and the global refugee problem that we should be worrying about. And AI is actually potentially going to help us tackle some of those big challenges, help us to use the world's resources more sustainably.
Why, in that case, do you think that is such a repeated refrain? Is it just something about that captures the public imagination, which again may be a good thing for the field, this idea of robots that are going to be sort of doing all these things in the future that they don't do currently? Can you give us a sense from the inside of what you think is fueling that?
I suspect the AI community should probably fund some scriptwriters in Hollywood and get them to sell some stories that aren't about the idea of Terminator, the robots are going to take over. Robots have no consciousness or desires of their own. They do exactly what we tell them to do. And actually, that's normally the problem. We haven't thought carefully through what they do. And it's actually stupid AI that I'm much more worried about than smart AI, that we're giving responsibility to machines that aren't actually capable enough, that don't have the moral compass, that we shouldn't be giving them life or death decisions, that we shouldn't be allowing them to take over warfare, we shouldn't be allowing them to decide who goes to jail, who gets welfare, because they literally aren't capable enough of making those decisions and they can't be held accounted for those decisions.
And one of the great strengths of AI research sitting at universities, I suppose, is that they are multidisciplinary as well as technical experts. You have philosophers and people thinking about ethics and governance and all those issues too. Is that one of the strengths of what a university can bring to the development of AI versus private technology companies and so on?
I think there are two strengths that universities bring to the study of AI. One is the diversity of thought, that we're realizing that it's just not technologists that should be answering these questions. We need to bring into the same room ethicists, philosophers, sociologists, economists, political scientists, historians. We can learn from the past as to what might happen in the future. And so it's a very broad conversation that we have, and universities are the perfect place with the long-term vision to have those sorts of conversations. And the second is that we can entertain much more long-term left field ideas. And I do talk to my colleagues working in the big tech companies, and they say the next breakthroughs are not going to happen in a big tech company. They're going to happen, as they've always happened in the past, in universities, in that environment where it fosters people to ask the difficult questions, to question the very foundations of every field.
I mean, that being the case, one of the things that came out in the session just now was the worry that this sort of war for talent, that universities are being sort of obliterated by the private sector. Probably salaries are a big part of it, but also access to big data that you wouldn't have perhaps in academia and so on. How worried are you about that actually all the talent from people that would formerly have done postdocs and then gone into research positions are just flowing out into the private sector?
I am very worried about the war for talent, that many of my students are lured to go and work in the tech companies. The tech companies have a number of natural advantages. They have they command salaries there that we can't hope to match, and also the opportunity. They have data and computational resources, again, that it's hard to match in universities. So it's not surprising that many of them are being lured in, and that's very worrying. It's very hard for us to recruit professors to keep people, to hold of people, to educate the vast numbers of people that will be needed with these sorts of skills. So this is a very challenging problem, and one I think we need to look for creative solutions. We're increasingly seeing the tech companies partnering with universities. I think that's to be welcomed. I think that many of them are recognizing that they do have to make sure that they don't take all of the talent and leave the universities withered on the vine. Equally, we need innovation from vice chancellors and university administrators to look at ways that perhaps professors can spend half time in companies and half time back in universities. We have to be creative to make sure that we can actually profit from this revolution.
And could you give me a sense, as a very celebrated professor in this area yourself, what stopped you from being part of that flow out of the university sector?
I love the freedom of working in university, the fact that you wake up in the morning and you can think about challenging problems and you can look at the problems that you think are important. It's a huge, great luxury, a huge, great privilege funded out of the public purse, and I feel a real responsibility then to ensure that we work on problems that will return value to society. And universities are the drivers of innovation, the drivers of growth for our society, and ones that I think it's an amazing luxury to be able to work in university. But equally, we have returned, and we always will return, great value to society through the blue sky thinking that we're allowed to do, and that's something that's to be celebrated and preserved.
Are there limitations, do you think, of where AI can go in the next, 20, 30 years?
Well, the more I've studied AI, the more respect I have for the human brain. It's the most complex system in the universe, and that we are absolutely remarkable in our abilities. And we have a long way to go, 50, 100, hundreds of years maybe, before we can really match the capability of the human brain, its breadth of ability, our adaptability, our creative intelligence, our emotional intelligence, our social intelligence. So there's a lot still we've got to work on. And there's a lot of human strengths that I'm not sure that we'll ever replicate in silicon, and even if we could, we're very ever care to get the machines to do it. So I see it as trying to eventually, I hope that AI stops being called artificial intelligence and becomes augmented intelligence, that we use these as tools so that we can amplify what we do. And we've always taken tools and amplify what we can do. And we're just now discovering that maybe we can amplify our brains just like we've amplified our muscles in the past.
Is there anything that, perhaps would wake you up at 3 a.m. worrying about where AI might go? You talked about sort of stupid machines being given more responsibility than they should be. Maybe that's what it is. But is there anything that, you really do think is, if not an existential threat, something we really should be worried about?
I do lie awake at night at the moment, worried about some of the developments that are happening. I actually am optimistic in the long term. The investing in technology has always brought us a better quality of life. Life expectancy, even in the developed world, has almost doubled in the last 100 years. But I'm actually quite pessimistic in the short term. It's going to be a very bumpy road, and we're already starting to see some of those bumps, how our political discourse is being corroded by the misuse of technology. We're already seeing the increasing inequality within our society. We're seeing growing discontent within our society, rightly so, driven in part by some of the technologies, driven often by artificial intelligence. And those are trends that I think we have to be very concerned about and to worry about, what sort of society do we want to wake up in? People make a mistake. They think that technology changes society, and it does. It does change the society that we live in. But equally, society gets to change technology. And there are some things where we have to think carefully about how the technology is used so that we have the benefits without the downsides.